Hello, it's Denise from Women Beyond a Certain Age. We are so lucky today because I reached out to a Facebook friend, Deborah Freeman, and texted her, and out of the blue, I said, could you be on my podcast? And she said, yes. And I thought, holy, she doesn't know me. And I thought, how lucky for me. So our guest today is Deborah Freeman. Now, hello, Deborah.
Hey, how are you?
So I'm so grateful you said yes. Thank you. I am wonderful. And let me tell you, I have to tell them a couple of things about you, and then I have some questions for you. I've known Deborah from Facebook, and I know everybody, people love to bash Facebook, and I know it has its flaws. But if I didn't go to Facebook, especially since I'm not out working every day anymore, Deborah, I wouldn't see the articles that you write. Do you see what I'm saying? I wouldn't see a whole bunch of young women that I think, to be perfectly honest, are changing food writing, all for the better, okay? All for the better. And I don't think of you as a food writer. I think you are a food anthropologist, okay?
Oh, wow.
I'm kidding you. I read everything you sent to me and I thought, this child is an anthropologist. So I just want people to know that. Now, let me read a little something about you. Remember how we talked for a minute about how I go on and on? Okay, that may have been a first example. Deborah Freeman has written for outlets such as Plate Magazine, Epicurious, Garden and Gun, Pit Magazine, Gravy, Southern Grit Magazine, and Gastro Obscura. She has had her work featured in the Huffington Post and the New York Times, and has done cultural commentary for BBC Radio and other international outlets. Freeman writes about the intersection of race, culture, and food. Oh my God!
That makes you sound really important.
You know what? You should sound important because you are important. Honey, I have to tell you, really. Now, let me tell you, and then I need to ask you about it because I have to tell people one more thing. Before I'd asked you to come on the podcast, you put a question again on Facebook. I'm not getting paid for Facebook. I just want people to know that. But I love reading when people post the magazine that they're in, or they tell me an award, people say, I won this award, or I'm going to work for this. My God, it's fantastic. You get all the food news you need in one spot in the morning. Mm-hmm. So when you had asked a question, and I don't remember what group it was in, or if it was just your private stream, Deborah, you said, I'm writing about yellow cake. What are people's memories of yellow cake? And this is all I want to say, and then we'll talk about that again later, and then, because I want to talk to you about your ode to watermelon, is what I would. But I have to tell you, when you asked that question, and I read every single thing that people answered, and Deborah, and I said this in mine, I had an Italian grandmother. She came to America after World War II during 50s when they weren't allowing many people in, and my grandfather married her, who was the second wife. She used to buy cake mixes of yellow cake mix, and I said this earlier because she thought that was the easiest thing in the world. And of course, they'd had so few provisions in Italy during the war. So to come to America and you have this beautiful kitchen and you can buy the yellow cake mix in a box. And then she added stuff to it to make them Italian, amaretto and rum and stuff. And I was so grateful for you to bringing that question up in my mind. So we're going to talk about your yellow cake mix. We'll tell people your yellow cake story, where they can get it afterwards. But this is what I need to tell you. I read Your Fruitful Journey, My Watermelon Summer. I read it twice because I thought this is the most charming story I've read in I don't know how long. And I still read.
Thank you.
I read please, I'm not. If I seem like I'm gushing, I'm not really gushing. I was excited to hear your voice is really what it comes down to. So so people will understand everything with that long introduction that I just said. Okay, and I know it was long-winded.
It's flattering.
No, tell us about your watermelon journey.
such an interesting question. So, but first, thank you for being so gracious and so kind with the introduction. That's really lovely. Well, let's see, the watermelon journey is pretty interesting. This probably started, I guess, 2 years ago when I read about the Bradford watermelon, which I'm sure many people are familiar with. And so I read an article, I think in Southern Living, actually. And I ordered a watermelon and realized, oh, I've got to drive from Virginia to South Carolina to pick up this watermelon. And so then, as I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, what are other watermelons that I don't know about? And so I enlisted my partner's tips, and he really took to it and spent days just hunting down rare watermelons. I mean, we drove to Pennsylvania, we drove to Delaware, North Carolina. Like, you pretty much traversed the Eastern Seaboard for all of these really rare watermelons, and that was before we even got to Bradford. And so,
one thing. So you heard about Bradford from Southern Living magazine?
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. Yeah, there was an article about it.
Okay. And your partner's name is Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to mention him because he takes the photographs for your articles.
He does, and he's brilliant. He's brilliant.
And of course, then the guy goes on, you tell it, but goes on to grow these watermelons. Oh my God. Deborah, this is so continue. So you're scoping out the landscape for a Bradford watermelon.
Exactly. And so then, what happens is that he starts to collect seeds. And so he's saving the seeds. We're eating the watermelons, he's saving the seeds. And so a year ago, he's like, I think it would be great if we grow these watermelons. I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. Why? I am from the city. I like asphalt. Like, I don't understand what's happening. Long story short, he had friends who knew a friend that basically was like, here, you can grow things here. And it was actually at Powell-Womack Native American site in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So he would drive an hour each way every day to hand water, hand pollinate these watermelons. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It looked like it was the 1800s out there, because he was literally on his knees, making sure that the vines were okay. Occasionally I would play music for the watermelons. My mother told me that is what you should do. You should play music for plants. So I'm out there playing Etta James and all these stuff.
Nice.
It was pretty over the top. And so it was just a really interesting experience. I learned about what people call deer repellent, but what it's called, he was like, hey, to repel the deer, can you call this hardware shop and ask for deer urine? And it's like, deer urine? I don't, I'm not going to do this. And he's like, no, please, just can you go ahead and call him? So, hi, I'm looking for deer urine. And the guy just laughed me out of the, he was just like, ma'am, I've worked here 25 years. No one has ever asked me for deer urine. This is insane. I hope you have a great day. So, and it doesn't work. That's the beauty part of the story. It doesn't even work. So it was a great experience. And we wound up growing about 100 really rare watermelons, some that had not been in Virginia before. And we were able to sell some of those watermelons to folks around the state and give it to chefs, which was really cool. And they did some things with it too. So it was a very arduous experience, but it was really great too.
Okay, but I will say this, when in your article, you said the reason that Bradford melons can't be shipped anymore is they're too delicate.
Exactly.
That so struck me, Deborah, and this is why. My father owned grocery stores, okay, in Marin County, little tiny grocery stores, beautiful markets. I shouldn't say tiny, they were beautiful. Before all the big chains came in, and he eventually, I mean, they were union and stuff, but he sold out because the food for less, Kroger, it was, the writing was on the wall that mom and pop grocery stores in the day and age of supermarkets was going south. But I can remember, the produce was different when I was a kid. I say this to people all the time, because we didn't ship it from here. all the way across the country. I'm 70
Right.
years old, Deborah. Okay. So as a child, they were buying, which is what we're all trying to do. They bought more local. So my father's markets were in Marin County, and we went to the Salinas Valley, and we went to, Sonoma.
Mm-hmm.
Fruit and meat, everything tasted better because it didn't have to stay fresh for 3 months. Okay.
That's right.
And in produce, when you go into produce stores now, and I've lucked out, we retired and we're in Ventura, Deb, which is an hour and a half out of LA. I'm surrounded by Driscoll strawberries and Duda Farms and celery. So I can go to the farmer's market almost any day in Ventura, and there's farm stands. The difference in the produce, the flavor is outstanding. So when after Josh, God bless him, I feel like I should send, I want to send Josh a present for him. When you were eating the watermelon, tell me about the flavor.
Oh my goodness. So legitimately, it was like I had never eaten a watermelon before. It was like what I had been eating for years and years and years, was kind of, sort of, but not really at all. It was so incredibly flavorful, juicy, sweet. The flesh was not, mushy. It was a firm flesh. And it was just really outstanding because I had never experienced that. Because I've been getting, my watermelons from the grocery store, and so this was incredibly new to me. And so then that obviously spun off to tasting different watermelons and noticing the differences in a yellow meat watermelon versus a red meat watermelon. Why does this taste like apricot? And why does this have different notes in it? It was really fascinating. And you can't go back to eating produce from a grocery store. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible.
Now, this, I want to hear you. I want to say, my grandfather came to San Francisco, in the big city of San Francisco, had a patch of land the size of like a normal small bedroom in an apartment. Mm-hmm. But he grew tomatoes, lettuce, had a rabbit hutch. And I have never tasted lettuce like I had out of my grandfather's garden. Okay. And sandy soil, the limestone lettuce in San Francisco, the fog, not that much sun. And I say that to people and their eyes roll to the back of their head because they're not very interested. Okay. They don't care. Okay.
Well, they don't know.
They don't know, but and when I have to buy lettuce, I buy baby gem lettuces right around on the corner at a farm stand. So, and my husband says to me, yeah, I know he says, Jesus, where did you buy this lettuce? I said, from Miguel on the corner. He's a big farm stand. It tastes so divine. Most lettuce to me in grocery stores, and it feels like you describing watermelon, tastes like nothing.
Exactly.
Tastes like nothing. We eat it because we need the fruit.
Exactly.
Fiber, but it doesn't taste like anything.
Exactly. It's really remarkable. I mean, even any produce that you can speak of. I mean, even when we were kind of hunting down corn a little bit and hunting down, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it right now, of course, but tasting corn that really had just been picked an hour ago, yes. And then understanding that the longer it sits before you make it, that the sugars are going to dissipate. It's not going to be as sweet. And it was shocking to me. And it just completely, it was like the light bulb turned on. It was like, I can't go back. But if anyone can ever get really fresh produce, really fresh fruit and vegetables, it will change your life. It will legitimately change your life.
Now answer me this. Tell us what you did. Tell the audience what you did with the watermelon with chefs. Because this is fascinating.
Yeah, so a couple of different things. There were a couple of chefs that we turned it into hot sauce and barbecue sauce. So it was a really interesting thing how they, basically cooked the watermelon down, and it sounds weird, right? So watermelon hot sauce, watermelon barbecue sauce, it sounds bizarre, but I promise you it's not. Particularly the watermelon barbecue sauce, because that actually it was so delicate and it was sweet, but there was a little bit of heat in it. It was really phenomenal. And the hot sauce was spicy, but that watermelon, you could taste that watermelon and it cut through. It was the most unique, but still really flavorful and beautiful thing. It was shocking. And we were lucky enough to work with a couple of chefs and follow it and sell some of those that sold out quicker than we ever anticipated to. But it really was one of the most unique experiences because I've never thought about watermelon and hot sauce ever in life. So, but it was a great experience.
Now, how did you decide to be a food writer? I know you have a college degree. I mean, how did you get into it, Deb? Because you said you're a city girl. So,
absolutely.
I know exactly. I mean, I went to chef school and my mother's words were, isn't that why we sent you to college the first time? So you wouldn't end up in a kitchen. She was horrified, okay? And she had a point. How did your journey start and get you to be so clever to get your partner to grow watermelons for 2 hours? That's what I want to know.
Well, what's funny is that Southern Grit, that's Josh. He runs Southern Grit. And so what's funny is that's how we met. I sent him an article for the magazine and he liked the article. And so that was probably, 2017 or 2018. So it hasn't been that long. This has not been, I don't have a storied career in food writing or anything like that. My background is actually in politics. And this is something that I started doing on the side and it just kind of exploded. And so, I've really figured out that for me, it was important to tell these stories. They're not being told. And so I primarily write about African-American food, but in Southern foodways as well. But it's just so interesting that there's so much that we take for granted and never think about where did this come from? Who started this? Why is anyone talking about this? And so that really became a passion of mine. It's just grown and grown and grown. And to the point where this is the most fascinating topic. I enjoy telling that to everyone. Like you mentioned the yellow cake, that just came from a random conversation, but it was a thought process like, well, wait a minute, I can't be the only one. So what is this about? And I did, well, I don't want to jump ahead because
we're going to talk about yellow cake in a minute. Now, let me tell you, which is why I think this is so fascinating. And when I first got to Los Angeles, so I'm from San Francisco, Chinese, Italians, okay, that was the demographics growing up. But then I moved to LA, totally different, Hispanic, lots of Black families, lots of Black people.
Sure.
So I'm about 30 something, 33. I become a caterer. We had yachts, Deborah. So it's all the high end. We're going for the high end parties. And no matter where I would go to talk to a hostess in Beverly Hills, she'd say, well, we like your company, Denise, but we've been using Marvin for years. And I said, okay. And then I found out that Marvin was an African-American man who had worked on the trains. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Then worked at the White House, and then moved to Beverly Hills and opened his own catering business.
Oh,
I never met him. I heard about him. I called his office once or twice. I think I talked to him once. I don't know what happened to him. Now, my quest is after talking to you, I thought I have to find out what happened to Marvin. But here was the thing. I don't know if people realize, and maybe they do now, thank God, because there's so much new information bubbling. But the history of Black Americans in service and in the culinary arts goes back further than anybody else. Do you know what I mean? Because
absolutely.
They were that's, people say stuff and I go, who do you think was cooking in the kitchen?
Exactly.
I love Uncle Nearest, the bourbon. I mean, the story, It was his recipe. He was making the bourbon. So I think that this is all part of hopefully an awakening to people, to our culture. People have to look beyond craft American sliced cheese, dig a little.
Exactly.
So my first intersection with Black American cuisine was Marvin. A young man came to work for me and worked for me for a number of years. And his name was Andrew. And he kept still get in touch with me. He was a genius. He went on to do tech and make some money. He got out of chefing. He was much smarter than I was. But first time I ever said to someone, I said, Andrew, you should look into African Americans on trains have stories that are not being told. Okay. They are stories not being told. Now I've looked, and I look at Amazon sometimes, and there are a few, like a granddaughter of a steward tells these stories and stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just so fascinating to me because there is an answer to how things got here.
No, absolutely. And it's interesting that you mentioned trains. I am writing an article that'll be out next year that talks about the waiter carriers of Gordonsville. And basically, these are women who sold fried chicken and other, desserts and things like that at a train stop in Gordonsville. So when the train stopped, this is pre-air conditioning, so everyone has their windows down. So coming into the train are smells of this, chicken and biscuits and, cakes and pies and all this sort of thing. And so those Black women were really entrepreneurs. And actually, that town, Gordonsville, was nicknamed the fried chicken capital of the world. And it was famous just because of the food. And so, eventually with modernization, that died out. But that's such an interesting thing that a lot of people don't know about or talk about.
And fabulous. And you know what I always think of? The only, and I say this, and I don't mean, I'm not male bashing, okay? But I've been a friend of Toni Tipton Martin for years. I remember when she would get the Aunt Jemima Code published, okay? I mean, she was determined. I'm talking about probably the beginning of the 90s. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And I had a card, and I came home and I said to Cindy, I'd seen her at IACP. Now, fast forward, of course, it's opened up a total channel of information and for people, and it's wonderful. Now, and Toni to me was really kind of the leader of that, and there have been people. Oh, and Jessica Harris. I mean, I'm not just,
of course.
When we think of the women that were selling the chicken to the train guys, there would have been women on those trains cooking that food if they'd been allowed to. But women, hello, the reason male chefs, French or whatever, Italian, whatever, it's because they could get the job.
Exactly.
Michel Richard, lovely Frenchman who really brought such beautiful food to Los Angeles. Got every award under the world, died too young, but he was as French could be. And he got this big awards, and I was invited to some of these dinners, and he would always put his hand on his heart and say, my mama taught me to cook. And I used to always think to people, well, of course his mother taught him to cook.
Obviously.
You know what? So in the history of food, it was the women that were doing the cooking.
Absolutely.
I'm tired of it. So I want you to write about women cooks. I want you, forget it. We're not going after Marvin after all. Now, let me tell you, I want people to know. Now, where can they read? Deborah sent me some of these. So you have Southern Foodways, where some of your articles are. So if they go to that, then they can put your name in and probably come up. I know that you said that next month is the yellow cake story coming out.
Yeah, any day now, actually, for Food 52. And so I'm checking my email constantly to see when it's up. I cannot wait until that's published. That one has really been one of my favorite articles I've written in a while. Yeah.
What did you find out, madam? Now, what did you find out about yellow cake?
Yeah, so, what was interesting about yellow cake, this all started from a conversation. Basically, I'm like, yellow cake is my favorite. And so once again, my partner, Josh, was like, yellow is not a flavor, it is a color. And I'm like, no, is a flavor, is the flavor. I'm sorry, you're out of your mind. And so then it kind of sparked this debate. And so, I went on Twitter and did an informal poll, much like on Facebook. And about 300 people responded with memories and photographs of their families basically, grandmothers that made this either, every Sunday or for special occasions. And just some of them were just really, really beautiful memories that I think was most interesting. I mean, obviously the history of yellow cake and where that comes from, from Europe, that was interesting too. And that's in the article. But what was really fascinating was there just seemed to be this thread that connected so many people in the Black community, and the association of yellow cake with family and with home and with, just feeling safe and secure. And so it was really lovely to know that that wasn't just my experience, but that experience, transcended throughout the entire community. And it's one of those sort of, non-tangible ties that people who don't know each other, who live, completely different lives, in completely different places, but have the exact same experience and the exact same emotions that I did. And that was just really special. And so many people, sent me messages saying, thank you, I'm going to make a yellow cake, or thank you, I'm going to call my grandmother and I'm going to, ask her to write down her recipe. And that is what really the biggest reward for me.
Now, how do you like your yellow cake? What frosting do you like?
Oh, there's only one frosting. Okay. And that would be chocolate. There's only that. I mean, I don't even know what you're talking about besides chocolate. 2 layers, chocolate buttercream frosting, and it's perfection.
Now, I'm with you, and let me tell you, I said this when you asked this question. See, I went to a French cooking class. This is in a gymnasium in a little crappy school like in Marin County. It cost like $10 for 3 classes, if that tells you something.
Oh my goodness.
So many years ago. This is in the early 70s. And the French woman, she made us go around and answer a question. What's your favorite cake? And I said, yellow cake. And she said, oh, and you are wrong. And she made this big scene. I'll never forget it, because my best friend was sitting next to me, and Carol says under her breath, wrong answer. Wrong. My grandmother that I told you would add rum to it or amaretto to this cake mix and put chocolate frosting, or even just powdered sugar on it.
Ooh.
And that cake was out of this world. So fast forward, the French woman who said exactly like Josh, that is a color, not a flavor. Then when I went to cooking school and I'm learning to make genoise and different cakes, I'm thinking, this is yellow cake.
That's right.
Okay, this is a butter yellow cake, but in America, we call it yellow cake. But I thought this is basically a very classic cake. I'm the same way. I love it. Now, when I watch old movies, because I was a food stylist for so many years, I'm always looking at food scenes. Okay, that's what interests me. I'm fascinated by food scenes in movies. And all I kept thinking about with your yellow cake was, if you watch old Walt Disney films, so now they're in color, whereas in black and white, we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole nother thing. And I've done some research on this because I just go down the rabbit hole on useless bits of information. But I can remember in like the Church Bazaar and Pollyanna and in all these Disney films, there's always a cake scene, because there was a way to share your grandmother or your family story or the love. Okay. Look at how, if you really look, movies always have birthday scenes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Writers write birthday scenes because the cake is either a disaster and someone failed and the kids.
That's right.
And I say this to people and the cocktail parties, and they're drinking their drinks thinking, get away from this woman. How can I get away from this woman? Like, who cares, bitch? But I care. Okay. And I think, and I sometimes in my mind, though my grandmother made yellow cakes, my mother at the bakery, when she bought when we got a few bucks, Deborah, she was never making a cake again. Okay. She was shaking the dust off her poor roots, honey. And we went to the bakery and we always got like white cake or chocolate cake.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandmother made these yellow cakes. And to me, it's one of the happiest memories in my life. So that's why when you touched on it, I think it's phenomenal. I think you're touching on subjects that people do want to know the history of.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's what I'm doing. And I hope that I'm creating a moment where they have a memory that's associated a positive memory, obviously, but a memory associated with whether it's yellow cake or collard greens or barbecue or whatever that thing is. I really want the reader to walk away going, I remember this, and hopefully to continue whatever that dish is or wherever that food is, because that's how these things continue, particularly in the Black community, when I've been researching things, so many things are via oral history versus being written down. And so, my encouragement is to write these recipes down, to talk to your grandparents, to really, understand why this tastes a certain way, because once the, people pass on, so do, the expertise and the recipes. And so that's how we can live on and sustain our memories, our legacy.
You said that beautifully, Deborah. I've only made raviolis a few times, and they were not as good as my grandmother's. Okay, not at all. I tried, but they're okay. But yeah. I have two sisters, neither of them cook, both of them gorgeous and successful and stuff, and they'll taste one of those raviolis and go, and that, and they're saying these aren't as good. It's just right. With their pretty little mouths, and inside, I think you get in the kitchen and try. I think your point about writing recipes down, especially because when you cooked with someone of another generation, and of course, Cindy and I know this one, we'd have young people that just came to work with us as interns. They just don't have the feel of food yet, Deborah. Do you know what I mean? They don't.
Absolutely.
They don't have it. If you make biscuits, which I was lucky enough, when we made biscuits with Natalie Dupree one afternoon, she just turned to us and she would always say, I don't mean to growl, give me more flour. Because we had measured out from her cookbook a recipe, but here she was in California, different weather, different day.
That's right. That's right. White
lily flour, but it wasn't, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when people really know how to cook, there's such a feel to it. But it's at least the recipe is a guideline, to tell us how to get there.
No, for sure. There are so many moments that my grandmother, she's passed away, that I wish I had said, how did she make her collard greens? How I have tried for years to make her cornbread unsuccessfully. It's never correct. It's never, something is always a little off, and it's just, those are things that I wish I could recreate and, taste that again. And so that is something that's so important. And I believe that one day I might get it right, one of these recipes, but fingers crossed on that. But that will really create such a moment, where it's like that she's there with me, if that makes sense.
Total sense. Tell us what's coming up in your future.
Oh my goodness.
What do you do next? What are you doing? I know you're always got something in the hopper, but what else? I know you may, do you have a radio show? Did I read that you're working on? What you doing?
Yeah. So I'm working on a podcast that will be out probably late winter, early spring next year. And so I'm really excited to get a chance to explore these stories, but in an auditory way, because a lot of times when you write articles, a lot of stuff that you would have loved to keep gets cut out because of space and that sort of thing. And so this will really be an opportunity to really explore and really delve deep and actually hear from experts and chefs and historians. And so I can't wait to formally announce that. And so that'll be coming out soon. The history of fried chicken that I mentioned that earlier, that will be out, I believe, in April. And so the origins of that might surprise you. I'll say that. And
I want people to know that you're going to come back when the podcast is up and running, Deborah, so that we can tell people about it. And I cannot thank you enough for your time today, because I know how valuable it is when you are a writer. And I wish you the best. And I want you to know, it's just your watermelon story. And this will be up to Cindy. Cindy, we have a beautiful photograph. We have several photographs of you. Okay, Deborah, and one that you sent us that is just like gorgeous. It's it's
Thank
gorgeous.
you.
But I need, and no one else can see this. Cindy, I need you to see this picture of Deborah hugging the watermelon.
In Delaware, on the side of where it was.
You look like it's your baby. I looked at this after I read the article because I hadn't seen it at first, and you're so perfect, and it's not staged, but it really, you're behind a gas pump that has the same color, but the way you're holding that watermelon, I wish I was that watermelon. I wish I was a baby that you love. It's the dearest thing I've ever seen. Not to mention you look gorgeous, but
Thank you.
that is so cute and so pure, and I like it so much. It warms my heart that there can be, we live in such a difficult time, Deborah. I have to only take in most of the time what I call good news. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I can't, I send my money to organizations that are dealing with the bad news, but I find that this was just, meeting you has been uplifting to me. That's all I can say.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. And I can't wait to come back and talk to you again. This has been phenomenal.
Thank you. All right. Now, for anyone that wants to reach out to Deborah before that, Cindy puts everything on our Facebook page, Women Beyond a Certain Age. We will have links to some of Deborah's work, to Deborah herself. What else? If you want to reach Cindy and I, it's womenbeyond@icloud.com. If you have a criticism, I suggest you take it somewhere else. Oh, I guess that's not what I was supposed to say. No, we would love. No, I don't even want constructive criticism. At this age, I don't think I need anybody telling me what to do. So, but if you have a comment or one of our guests, I'll tell you what, Deborah, that we really appreciate. People that have listened to us. One of my friends said to me recently, who was in PR for years, she says, I see it. People, you're growing by leaps and bounds. How are you doing that? I said, I think it's by accident. I don't think that it's, but I mean, no, we don't have a business plan or anything. It's me and Cindy. What do you want? But I'll tell you something. People, women especially, respond to other women's stories because you know what? We're all in it together. And if we can help or inspire each other or lift each other up, isn't that what we're here for? I mean, I don't know. That's what I think we're here for.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
We're not here for a new couch and wall-to-wall carpeting, though everybody tells us that. That's really not what we're here for. Well, Miss Deborah, thank you so much. Cindy, as always, thank you for everything you do. And again, Women Beyond a Certain Age, our Facebook page, we have a website also, same name. They call that a brand, but Women Beyond a Certain Age, the Facebook page, we get interesting conversations sometimes. And really, that's where we put up new podcasts every Sunday. So, Deborah, thank you again. And
thank you so much.
And we're going to talk to you again. We're going to stalk you and find you again.
Absolutely. Please do.
Okay. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.